Chicago Tomahawk. I'm Mike, and we have a interview with Theo Fox that is going to come up right after this update. We wanted to talk about Rockey Wirtz's comments yesterday and give a quick rundown of the game yesterday, which would be really quick, and then we're going to get right into the Theo Fox interview. So I'm actually still at a loss for words from what Rockey had to say yesterday during the town hall meeting for the Chicago Blackhawks. You know, essentially being incredibly unprofessional to two writers, and in an environment and a forum where it's supposed to be somewhat of an open communication, meaning that these questions are meant to be asked. And it wasn't as if that they were asking for questions pertaining towards past events in 2010. They were more referencing towards how are the Blackhawks going to move forward. Rockey Wirtz wasn't having it. He said it was none of their business on how they do things. And to Danny Wirtz's credit, he tried to jump in and take over and talk about really what the Blackhawks are doing. He mentioned afterwards that he was willing to talk about the things that the Blackhawks have changed and the things that they're doing to make meaningful change. But Rockey essentially cut him off, which was a real boomer move that he did yesterday, essentially trying to be king of the hill and putting his franchise into essentially dire straits because it just looks incredibly bad. Matt, what did you take from Rockey's comments yesterday?
Hey, yeah, that was well said. I think that Danny was prepared for this question.
Yeah.
And Rockey kind of is, hey, I don't want anything to do with Hawks operations, but he was real quick to jump all over, was that Lazarus? I believe.
Yeah, it was. It was Lazarus, yeah. And I forgot the other guy's name.
And I putting myself in Rocky's shoe, I guess I'm putting myself in Rocky's shoes here. I'm maybe he thinks he was being attacked with this question, and you know what, he didn't want anything to do with it. But unfortunately, if you talk about this and get it out in the open, it shows that you care. So What he did yesterday pretty much said, "Oh, we're moving on. We're going to forget about it." Well, really, you can't forget about it. You got to learn from it, and it seems like maybe he hasn't.
Here's the thing that I kind of have a problem with it. Rockey has been such a standoff owner, essentially, having John McDonough run the entire hockey operation. So if something happens, the grenade goes off in McDonough's lap, saves Rockey, and he replaces that person with, whoever he seems fit. Essentially what happened was they split McDonough's job into 3 jobs: the CEO, the business operations with Jamie Faulkner, and at the time, hockey operations with Stan Bowman. So in him actually taking questions of even being on site yesterday, I wanted to know what the hell he was doing there. He doesn't do anything with the day-to-day. He's kept it that way so that he can insulate himself. You can be the judge out there whether if that's right or wrong, because essentially if you're running a big business like that, maybe that is how you want to run things, but you don't take any responsibility for things that happen underneath you, which is essentially what he's trying to do. He's trying to escape the responsibility, and he avoided the grenade, but he threw his own grenade in his lap yesterday. He should have just sat there, shut the fuck up, and let Danny take those questions. It's his job. He's the CEO of the Blackhawks. That's what he's supposed to be doing. All that Rockey did yesterday was sit there, posture, try to be king of the hill, and he looked like a complete fucking idiot doing it. If I was Danny, I would have been pissed. I would have been like, hey old man, what the fuck are we doing here? Mm-hmm. What the hell is this? You're essentially sinking the ship. What you're doing here is we're on the boat, and you're throwing a bomb, in the hull and taking the whole ship down with them. If you looked and saw Eddie Olczyk, if you looked and saw Danny, if you looked and saw Jamie, they looked incredibly uncomfortable while Rockey was talking. They had no idea what was going on. And it was kind of funny. Somebody out there on Twitter mentioned that this was kind of like a scene out of Succession with Logan Roy, with the UTI, and it kind of gave me a short laugh, but holy shit, man. Could you imagine the war room after that? Like, hey, old man, I get it. This is your operation, but you're essentially trying to take it down with you. How did the Blackhawks move forward? Because people are going to be like, hey, look, we don't have any confidence in this owner anymore. It's kind of time for you to step back in a way.
Yeah, it's a tough one, man. I like you said, if he would have let Danny answer that question, like I said, he seemed well prepared, and he probably had a really good answer for it. Like, he probably was going to say, hey, listen, we got new policies. If this, God forbid, were to happen again, we know what to do. We're going to take the right steps in order to make sure it never, gets like how it did with Kyle Beach. And instead, Rockey just, I hate to say it, it's kind of like he showed shades of his old man, like he was on the defense all the time. And I mean, I don't really like any media sports writers that cover the Blackhawks at all. I like Theo Fox. So these guys, I know they're kind of out for themselves and they're doing stuff like that, but I don't think it was that really hard of a question, was it?
It wasn't at all. That's why I was so surprised. It wasn't appointed. It wasn't like a, hey, Rockey, so what the fuck? What's going on here? Your franchise is in flames right now. What's going on? It wasn't like that at all.
Well, and it wasn't like, hey, how much did Kyle Beach receive in a settlement?
Right.
And that's the case. I'd say, hey, that's none of your damn business.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with you. But
those are probably sealed documents as well. There's an NDA clause that are involved, and we can't discuss those kind of details.
Exactly.
It's just like that. But they didn't say anything
bad.
like that. They were just asking, like, hey, what have you guys done to make changes? And you know what? That's a fair question, considering that they haven't made a statement since the report came out.
Yeah, and I don't know if you caught the TNT game in between the intermissions. Rick Tocchet, Gretzky, and Anson Carter, even Liam McHugh was throwing some good points out there, the host.
Yeah.
And Gretzky said, hey, listen, man, what if my 18-year-old kid got drafted by your team? I want to know that he's safe. I mean, it's a great point by the greatest hockey player to ever live. And I mean, after last night, that's a great question. And how can Rockey answer that? He can't.
Yeah, he can. And to be honest with you, man, what a shitty time for this to happen, because we're in the middle of a GM search, and what kind of reputable GM is going to want to come to an organization where Rockey is just going on a tirade?
Yeah.
It's terrible. They're supposed to be looking for a head coach, and what reputable head coaches going to want to come and have to deal with an owner like that?
The ones that we already have, probably.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? Derek King's probably like, thank you. That just gave me some job security,
I mean, it's very bad timing. You're on the game of the night on, cable TV. A lot of people are going to view into this, and you know what? They didn't get anything out of the game. They got everything out of the town hall meeting. Yeah, and it's just a tale of two different owners. You got like an owner like, say, Bill Foley with Vegas. This guy's spending money to win a cup. He's got a good reputation with players. Obviously, the Fleury thing was kind of a big deal, but I mean, that's how Rockey was at first. He was like beloved. I mean, I for one was so happy when he came here, and just after last night, it's like, geez, it's like a totally different person.
Yeah, that's probably what happens with success, man. He was probably, they were backing in truckloads of money, and those trucks aren't really pulling up anymore.
It's going to get worse
because of everything that's happened, and it's really unfortunate. The bomb went off during the town hall, and then, to be honest with you, the game that followed for the Hawks was probably right in line with what happened, because it was a dumpster fire. It's almost as if the dumpster fire from from the town hall win to the game. Hawks got shut out for the first time this year, 5-0 against the Wild. The first period wasn't that bad. Then the second period happened, and then it all fell apart after that. Marc-Andre Fleury got pulled. He went on a tirade in the lock, on the way to the locker room, and it wasn't pretty after that. There isn't really much to talk about the game because there's nothing good happened. Nothing good happened. Yep. There's no really any takeaways. It was somewhat of a listless performance. And maybe these guys saw the town hall and it took the wind out of their sails.
They did. Yeah, they did for sure.
And
they talked about it.
How do you go and play after that? It's like, holy shit. It's like the ground underneath you is moving or giving way. So we have I would actually feel like a responsibility to tell our listeners that, this is probably one of the hardest times I've ever had of being a Blackhawks fan. I love the team. I love the boys. The management is a different story. I hold them to a different degree of professionalism and a different degree of responsibility. And I care about how the team is ran. I think in professional sports over the last 10 years, it has really come to light how people are interested on how teams are ran and who are running these teams. Before then, people just cared about the players, cared about the game, and that was it. Now we want to know who's running the team, what they're about, and what they're doing behind the scenes. And it's not looking good for Rockey. I think he needs to step aside, let Danny run the show. And I would like to see another town hall where where Danny can have an opportunity to answer questions from the media and show them that the franchise is making changes, and this franchise is not Rockey. This franchise is not John McDonough. It's not Stan Bowman. We are something different now, and we're going to right our wrongs and move forward. Not in a we're forgetting about Kyle Beach type of a way. In a we are taking responsibility for what we did. We're going to right those wrongs and we're going to move forward. That needs to be stated in a press conference, and it needs to be done obviously without Rockey Wirtz there. So, Matt, do you have anything more to say on that?
Well, I saw a good couple tweets out there, and I agree with this one. It says, "I do not hate the Hawks, could never hate and despise them, but disappointed, yes, very." And another note, players are not management. So
right.
The players should not suffer because of the stupidity going on. It's been going on for about 2 years now. And,
yeah,
those guys go out, they give it their all. They're not that great, but, they're still out there. They're trying hard. Marc-Andre Fleury is a future Hall of Famer. Enjoy it while he's still here. It's amazing. Alex DeBrincat is one of the best young goal scorers out there. Got a great future ahead of him. Enjoy it. So, hopefully we can find people with hockey minds, hockey-minded brains like Stevie Yzerman, Joe Sakic. Somebody like that. A former Hawks legend would be, my pick. Hopefully they could turn it around.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So now we are going to move on to the Theo Fox interview. It was a good one. We had a great time doing it. And we'd like to thank everybody for listening once again. And here we go. So how you doing, Theo?
Excellent.
Do us a favor, man, and give our listeners a quick, a cheat sheet on who you are. He's been on the show before. He's awesome, and you guys are in for a treat.
Sure. Yeah, I write for HockeyBuzz.com. Covers all NHL teams, so I cover the Chicago Blackhawks. Have been doing it for about a year and a half. So definitely enjoy it. Just great to talk about Chicago Blackhawks and other teams and players in the league. So a lot going on this year too with the World Junior Championship, which got canceled, and then the Winter Olympics, which didn't necessarily get canceled, but NHL players aren't going. So lots of topics to talk about, even if it's beyond the NHL.
Yeah, it's funny. They canceled the women's tournament, just flat out canceled it, and then they drug their feet on canceling the men's, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Yeah.
So anyways, let's talk some Blackhawks prospects, because we're at a point in this season where we've passed the halfway point, and the Blackhawks are still on the other side, I would say, of that. Pushing for a playoff spot. I mean, they are giving the effort to push, but them not being able to get 2 points out of games from these top teams like Colorado, losing in overtime. Yeah, I mean, getting one helps, but winning in regulation, getting a full 2 points is what they've been needing. They've needed to go on a really long run, and they haven't really been able to. I believe their longest winning streak this year is 4 games, and we need to know what's going on, in the prospect pool. A lot of people have been pulling for Lucas Reichel, and I'll tell you what, I thought that he looked great when he came up for an unfinished developed prospect. But I'd like to know how Ian Mitchell and Nicholas Bowden are doing down in Rockford.
Sure. Yeah. So. Ian Mitchell, and I would say even Jacob Galvas, they both really separated themselves from the pack in terms of defense prospects. And obviously both of them have had, Mitchell's been up more than Galvas has. But, they've both shown very well in terms of their growth. Mitchell's had the most growth because he had a lot to work on stemming from his rookie year last year. And Galvas, he had an impressive training camp. In preseason, and many, including myself, were actually I was thinking he'd be a dark horse and make the team out of camp, but I think it was the right decision to send him down to Rockford for get some development time in terms of playing on the larger ice surface. But I mean, he's been playing pro for 5 years in his home in Czech Republic and then Finland the past 2 years. But yeah, I think. Mitchell and Galvas, I think that they definitely stand out as the top 2 defense prospects that are in Rockford, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're in the starting lineup for the Blackhawks next fall for the 22-23 season.
Do you think Bowden needs another season down in Rockford in the AHL Rockford?
I think he does. I don't say he's regressed. He just hasn't grown a lot. When you watch him play. He's slow. His escapability isn't very good, and he's very passive the way he defends. If you're not in his grill, he's really just doing the passive stick checking. Always a stick links away from someone unless they're up against him in a board battle or they're jockeying in the crease. But I mean, he'll battle in the crease. Like him and Kalynuk have definitely shown a mean streak this season that they didn't show in prior years. And so that's good to see. They both need to rein it in, though, because Kalynuk has gotten some misconducts. I think he got 2 in 3 games, I think in December. And then Bowden, he'll fight. He'll, when push comes to shove, his temper will flare. But I think it's good that they show that pushback, but you definitely need to keep it in check, so you're not spending time in the box and shooting your team in the foot.
Wyatt Kalynuk was actually the next person that I wanted to bring up, and talk about a guy with some bad luck. We predicted him to make the team. He was going to make the team with Caleb Jones, and then they both get hurt in camp. And it seemed like, when he came back, it was kind of, they obviously signed Gustafsson, which I have no idea why they did that. And I think that he took his spot, which I think was a big mistake, because I think he needed the time to kind of have his NHL time. But he's been down at Rockford. He hasn't been back up. What's the scouting report on him? How's he doing?
On Kalynuk?
Yeah.
Similar to Bowden, it's a little disappointing. I don't think he's as disappointing because I think he has fits and starts where you're like, wow, he's really turning the corner. What he showed last year, that promise of just being one of the best skaters in the system, just that escapability. He moves the puck well. He's a very good power play quarterback. But once he got back from injury, you didn't see it. And you could chalk it up to he just needs his skating legs back. I think everyone needs that coming off injury. But after a while, it's just like you can't really lean on that as an excuse, so to speak. And so it was disappointing to see him regress from last year, because going into the preseason, I thought he was the top defensive candidate, at least in Rockford. If you're talking system wide, I think there's some other ones to consider. But in terms of who is readily available in the AHL and could be called up, he was top of the list. And then, like you said, disappointing that he got injured. Caleb Jones got injured, and I think it derailed him a little bit. And that's why I think say Mitchell and Galvas are the top two prospects in Rockford, and wouldn't be surprised if they're in the starting lineup for the Blackhawks next season, especially with DeHaan likely gone. Caleb Jones hasn't locked down a spot, and he's a free agent anyway, so I don't know if the Hawks would sign him.
I'll be honest with you. I thought that it was kind of one of these deals where, hey, we sign Caleb, we get Caleb Jones, he gets an opportunity, like, hey, look, we'll go to Seth Jones. We got your brother. Why don't you come down here? We can have a family matters over here, Yeah. And it's turned into, he's not that bad of a player. I think that he's pretty good. I wasn't expecting him to play as well as he did. Yesterday watching the Hawks versus who'd they play yesterday,
Detroit.
Matt? Detroit. He had a really great play where he, Bertuzzi we were in our own zone. He stole the puck from Bertuzzi and got a nice outlet pass, and it led to a goal. And I think that he's surprised a lot of people. Do you think that Caleb Jones might get re-signed by the Hawks?
He definitely has promise. I think him and his brother, they both have the best escapability out of their own end, out of the current set of Blackhawks. Gustafsson to a certain extent does, but I really like Caleb Jones' skating. His edges are so good. He's very sharp in his turns. He'll use lateral C cuts to move up ice and evade a checker, which you don't see. Especially NHL players, you would think a lot of them would employ a lot of those power skating moves, but and some of them do. Obviously, McDavid, he's like the king of power skating. But when you see someone like Caleb Jones employ it, and I think for him, it's just really more about consistency. He's definitely got the toolkit to be a two-way defenseman, because he can play physical too. He's a big guy. He's probably a little lanky. He's not like some behemoth like Tyler Myers or Chara, but I think he can throw a hit or a check just as much as a Connor Murphy would. It's just Connor Murphy just does it a little bit more consistently, and I think Caleb Jones, just with his skating and his physicality, if he can put it together and be more consistent, and I think he would be fine as a third pair defenseman, like a 5, 6, 7 spot. But that's always the knock on all youngsters, is just the consistency for most of them, and that's what you don't see from Reichel. He's always consistent. And even Galvas, he's pretty consistent too.
You bring up McDavid, and it's funny because if you go on YouTube, the McDavid skating videos are practically endless. And I would have to say that Nathan McKinnon comes into a close second there.
Cale Makar does too.
Yeah, he does.
Fascinating skater.
He is, man. He's an incredible skater. He's just incredibly agile. And what's really interesting is all of these guys are able to maneuver at top speed. They won't just go straight. They'll just go around guys. But I want to talk about Lukas Reichel for a second. I don't think that he's NHL ready, but I think that he's he has a good hockey sense, and it seems like he sees the game pretty well. Maybe the game's a little fast for him at the NHL level, but I think that he can get there. What do you think about Lukas Reichel?
Yeah. I definitely wasn't upset that he got his cup of coffee. It was a little early, what I was predicting, but, they sent him down after 2 games. And, there was rumors later that I think Derek King was even saying, he's going to be called up again soon. And I read, I think it was last week, saying that the Hawks wouldn't mind. I think it was in The Athletic by Scott Powers or Mark Lazarus, saying that the Hawks management wouldn't mind burning a year off of his ELC. And part of that is more of, once his ELC entry-level contract expires and he just knocks it out of the park, he's going to command a lot of coin. And so
Right.
like, let's just burn a year. And so that when he hits, in 2 years rather than 3 years, he won't ask as much, which, I understand that. And it's difficult because you got all these other prospects, but you at least know Doc's not going to be getting a lot of money on his next contract. I mean, he's got a lot to work on. And then you got players like Kubalik and Strome. If the Hawks do decide to retain them, they're not going to command a lot of money. The only person who's going to command a lot of money is DeBrincat when his next contract is up.
I believe we mentioned that in our last podcast. Me and Matt were making predictions, because I think it's, was it next summer or this summer? Actually, it's this summer when the 2022-2023 season starts. They can extend DeBrincat. We're predicting a $9 to $10 million extension to him. We're also kind of talking about what's going to go on with Taves and Kane. Are they going to get, are they going to want to extend with the Hawks? Are they going to get, are they going to be willing to do team-friendly deals? And we were talking about maybe, Taves getting a $5 to $6 million deal and Kane around the $8 million mark. But looking at the more recent Jeff Carter signing for, I think it was $3.25 million for 2 years. That's really interesting to see if maybe these guys will take even less money. That being considered, and Doc, like you said, that he's not going to be asking for too much money. I could also be on the other side of the aisle and say, hey, Jack Hughes, he scored 60 points in like 3 seasons. He's getting $8.5 million. What is Doc going to ask for?
Yeah. I mean, he can ask a lot. The Hawks have a lot of leverage to say you didn't necessarily earn it.
Right.
You can always play hardball with your own players. I mean, Hughes is an interesting comparison because there was a lot of criticism around the Devils just gave him way too much. I mean, he barely has played 2 seasons and he got that massive extension. And I think he'll still be a great player. He'll probably be one of the top 10 players in the league once he hits his stride. But to earn that much in a new deal right away, it's a little questionable. But, I think other people said the same thing about Blackhawks contracts too years ago. And so, Seth Jones too.
Yeah.
Even Dougie Hamilton.
We're still hearing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
He hasn't played much. I mean, I wouldn't say he hasn't played much, but he's had, some injuries this year. Dougie Hamilton.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm curious, man. If they're going to bring him up, why not just do it now if they're going to burn that year? I mean, yeah, sure, it makes sense. But how much money can he make? Because, well, I'll be honest with you. I mean, he was really trying to get some scoring opportunities when he was playing. I wonder if he can be a consistent scorer. And who would he play with? Who do they pair him with? Would they pair him with DeBrincat? To be a number 1C. I don't think that he's quite ready for that yet. And he also needs to work on his work at the faceoff dot. Realistically, do you think that maybe by next season he can be a consistent faceoff winner?
I think he can. I mean, look at Strome. I mean, well, he talked about how juggling helped him, and I know people laugh about that, but if that helps your eye-hand coordination, why not?
Right.
I'm sure there's other techniques you could do. And at one point, he was top 20, and I don't think he stayed in top 20 very long, but he's getting up there around 56, 57%. That's really good compared to mid-low 40s, I believe was maybe his average. And so it's definitely doable. And so, especially when you look at Doc, I mean, he's
brutal.
Like a third of his draws he wins.
Yeah.
And there's some games where it's like really bad.
Right.
And so, there's always talk about should he just shift to wing. And some say permanently, like for his entire NHL career, just start the shift now to be a winger. But some say, well, why don't he just start at wing, kind of like what a lot of prospects do. They may have played, center in juniors and in college or overseas, but in the NHL, they need to get their experience with less pressure, and that usually is often on the wing, and then graduate them over back to center, in 2 or 3 seasons later. So that could be an option for not only Reichel, but also for Doc.
Go ahead, Matt.
So
I think Doc should spend a year in the A. I mean, the Hawks, I think they rushed him and they pretty much almost ruined him. I think some time in the A would get him some confidence.
yeah, I think part of it is confidence. I think some of it is just the jump from juniors to the NHL as an 18, 19-year-old. It was like 3 years ago now. But I think give him a list of things to work on in the AHL, even if it's not a full between now and next season, the start of next season, but enough just to boost his confidence, because I think some of it's just mental. I think he's in his own head sometimes, grasping that stick a little too tightly.
I thought he played well yesterday, though. He had a nice back check, and he ended up picking a guy's pocket, going the other way, creating a good scoring chance. And I think, even when jumping back to Dylan Strome, I think this coaching change has really benefited him. He's been playing well the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. Well, him and Jeremy Colleton, they were like oil and water. I mean, you could even just tell in pictures and just some of the social media you would see, like, and even just
For sure.
if you want to parse his words, like in interviews, I don't think he really got along with Colleton. I'm sure he got some mileage out of that relationship, but he's definitely thrived under Derek King, just being able to play his game, playing on instinct, because he's smart. He's a good player. Like, you give him the opportunity to play make. He's slow, but he's smart enough, and he's getting enough NHL experience, and hopefully he gains some more, whether that's with the Blackhawks or another team.
Yeah.
Where I think he will emerge as a top 6 center. It's just he needs one, you need to have complementary line mates, especially if you're not the best of skater. But I think he's learning to use his intelligence and his hockey sense and his playmaking to compete. He's not going to win a lot of foot races to pucks, but if he's there, he can. It's kind of like Nick Schmaltz, the player he was traded for. Nick Schmaltz was just so good at just takeaways. Like, he would sneak up on a player, and I mean, he wouldn't engage in a board battle. He's very risk averse in that way, but Schmaltz would pick a pocket, and it, like, sometimes very subtly. And you would look at the stat sheets, and he'd have, like, I won't say a ton, but he'd have quite a bit of takeaways.
Yeah, he had a good season with Kaner before they traded him. Nick Schmaltz, yeah.
Schmaltz had good speed, and I would probably say one of the best attributes that he had was that he knew how to utilize his speed.
Yeah.
So, head coaching, do you think Derek King is going to get the job, or do you have any other coaches that come to mind?
I know a lot of people don't want him to be the head coach. I actually wouldn't mind if Mark Crawford was a coach,
Really?
or if they switched roles, so to speak, in terms of maybe Derek is associate and Mark Crawford is the head coach. The conspiracy theory that I've heard, just reading just other message boards, is that the person pulling the strings in terms of the X's and O's and strategy has been Mark Crawford. It's just that because of his past with abusive players, that the Hawks,
They're afraid to give him the role. Yeah.
Yeah, to formally give him that role. And so Derek King is, a little bit more acceptable and palatable. And that maybe in a sense he's the second command. I don't think it really matters in the end. But in terms of Derek King, I could see him getting the permanent gig, but I think also the Blackhawks would also, I don't know if Anders Sorensen is necessarily the best fit as a head coach for the Ice Hogs. I think Derek King, kind of like Jeremy Colleton before he became the Blackhawks head coach, Colleton was actually really good as the coach in Rockford because he was developing the youth down there. But then they graduated him prematurely, and definitely you saw what happened. And I just hope that the Hawks don't do that again with King. And King, he's always modest. He'll shoot from the hip. He tells you, he doesn't sugarcoat things. He cracks a lot of jokes, but there's a lot of kernel of truth to what he says. So I think King would be a candidate. Crawford would be a candidate, and then I just don't want to NHL retread. I also don't want to call it in either, like someone just out of the blue. And so I don't know what that sweet spot is in terms of candidates who aren't these, dinosaurs who've just coached and haven't really won a whole lot, even though they have a lot of track record, versus someone who may be very successful. I think an ideal candidate would be someone who's had success as an AHL coach, maybe won some championships or gone deep in the playoffs, or has been an assistant coach at the NHL level for a really long time and really has done well.
Needs
like
a shot.
Porchetti or Mike Haviland. I mean, they're former assistants in Chicago, but I always liked them. I thought they would be great head coaches, but they departed.
I like Torch. I remember, didn't he have a little run with the Wild, and he got him into the playoffs? They were a pretty good team that year, and I think the Hawks actually knocked him out in the playoffs that first round. I'm not drawing a blank with the year, but I think he turned that team around.
Yesterday, I think they named him the associate coach now in Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah. that dumpster fire! Oh boy.
Yeah, maybe he can turn it around. You never know.
Yeah.
Really quickly, Theo, I was wondering, what about Soderblom, the goalie? How is because I saw him play a game and he didn't look too bad, man. What's his deal?
Yeah, I think for him, he's obviously getting his feet wet playing in North America. But, I think what I like about him and Drew Commesso have a very, they have their differences, but I think the similarities that they do have is that, they're very efficient in their movement. They let pucks come to them. And I'm pretty sure Soderblom's a little bit bigger than Commesso, but Soderblom uses his size to advantage. He fills up the net. And so because of that efficiency and movement, he's not going to flounder a lot. I think Comesso's really good at soaking in rebounds, and he won't panic. And Soderblom won't panic either, but Soderblom could control his rebounds a little bit more, but I think that can come with experience working with, Aubrey, who's the goaltending coach down in Rockford, and obviously Jimmy Waite up on the big club. So I think there's potential for him. I think some going into because I believe he's the only Blackhawk goalie in the system who's eligible, who's signed after the season, because everyone else their contracts expire. Delia and Lankinen and Fleury, of course, and so
I think obviously Lankinen's going to get re-signed, but what do they do with Delia? Do they just let him go? Is he just going to be an AHL, goalie?
I personally would let him go. To be honest, I think everyone was happy for Subban to get a fresh start over the Sabres, and I think he just had a season ending injury, which is very unfortunate. But I think Delia is the same way. I don't think he has an opportunity here in Chicago. I don't know. He runs hot and cold. Like the best way to describe him is when he's on. He'll pitch a shutout. Maybe make 40 saves and let in 0 or 1 goal. And the next game, he's letting in like 3 goals in the first 10 shots. Yeah. And then he doesn't just that panic mode. Whereas Commesso and Soderblom and even Lankinen, they shake off, like they let in a goal, they shake it off. Delia, not so much. And it was weird. He used to be that way. He used to have be a lot more sturdy when he first broke in with Chicago. But ever since then, and I don't know if it's because there's been such a logjam of goalies, and it's just that there's so much competition, and obviously it's loosened up with Subban gone, but when they introduced Soderblom, it was like, maybe that's in his head. It's like, oh, you're signing this Swedish goalie. What about Malcolm and me? And obviously this was preseason. Malcolm's gone, but I personally would move on from him. I just don't think. I think what Soderblom can offer is better than what Delia can. And then there's Cale Morris, who was on an AHL deal, and then in order for him to be eligible to join the taxi squad, they signed him to a pro contract with the Blackhawks. So, but that expires, and his AHL deal was only a season, so he's also a free agent this summer too. But he's a possibility to bring back.
Yeah, I think they had him on the active roster pretty recently. Yeah, but I know because Lankinen's injured right now. He had one heck of a game the last game that he played, which is really unfortunate. Are there any other forwards in the that we can talk about that could possibly, move up? Is there anybody that, kind of flying under the radar?
He hasn't flown under the radar because he's been up and down. Is Josiah Slavin. He's like Mackenzie Entwistle. Just coaches love those type of players where they're just fundamentally sound. They make smart, simple plays, and they just do the little things that help teams win. So whether that's on the PK, defensive efforts, especially late in the game, to hold a lead, or to the game is tied and just to preserve it as a tie so your team can take the lead. But I think he is someone who could be on the fourth line next season, along with Entwistle. And then I think Barrett might be a dark horse for next season. He's an underrated passer, but I think what he's going to be known for is just kind of being a jack of all trades. He can slide up and down the lineup and complement skill players, but he can also be a role player and get the work done that way, just doing a lot of board work, crashing the net. He's a big agitator. He runs his mouth a lot. And then Andre Altibomarkian, I think he could also be a dark horse too. He's less refined than Brandon Hagel, but I like him their compete level at the same, being very similar. He's just nose over puck mentality. He will just pursue the puck and will just go through walls just to get the puck, to win it back or to hold on to it. He makes space for his line mates. It's just that, I think Hagel has just a higher skill level in terms of offense, whereas Altibomarkian doesn't. But similar to Barrett, Altibomarkian just has a lot of sandpaper to his game. He can really tick off the other team.
That's one heck of a name. How do you say that, Altibomarkian?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I'd like to see him come up. I just want to see that jersey.
Yeah.
He could knock it out of the park if he wears like number 69 or something like that. He'll be a fan favorite.
Down. Yeah.
Go ahead, Matt.
So, do you think that Kyle Davison will be the permanent GM, or do you think the Hawks are gonna kind of pull a fast one and bring a new guy in before the deadline?
Yeah. Depends on which day you ask me. I think most days I'm pretty sure, kind of like King. I don't want to dumb it down so much to say it's just the path of least resistance for management, but they're known quantities, and so I can see both King and Davison just getting the interim tags removed. And I think it came out today that the Blackhawks are going to make a decision on the GM. They said before March 21st yesterday, but I heard some news today that was within 2 to 3 weeks. So it's going to come soon, way before the trade deadline.
I think that's
part of
good.
Yeah. Especially because in the same breath yesterday, they said we're going to make a decision by the trade deadline, and we're also going to let Davidson make roster decisions to prep for that trade deadline. And a lot of fans are like, well, that's kind of a head scratcher. Like, what if he doesn't get the job? He gets to mold a team for a GM to inherit. That's just a little awkward. And so why don't you just make a decision sooner? And I think another conspiracy theory too is the Hawks looking at other teams around the league making all these management changes, and here they are not doing anything. And so some of this could have been forced because of they're getting a lot of pressure from whoever, fans, other stakeholders, to the team, where it's just like, why are you guys sitting on your hands when all these other teams are making these decisions? And part of it is this kind of a PR move, but part of it too is, hey, these other teams are interviewing people, and if you want the best candidates, these other teams could snag them. And so
you got to get them. You
got to be in the game to be able to win it. Right.
Yeah, I thought the same thing, and it's like, okay, well, so the trade deadline's coming up. We got Marc-Andre Fleury. We have, the whirlwind of rumors around him, and we have an interim GM. What's his deal? Can he make moves? What can he do? And I think that it's really disconcerting that, up to this point, there's really been nothing really from the organization on, just having some kind of stability in these roles, because I think the players need it. I think they need to know, like, hey, this is my head coach. Like, this is it. This isn't like, hey, Derek King's here one day and he's not here the next day, Yeah. And so I think that they need to shore that up. Maybe if they shore that up, that could help, change things around for the team, so that the GM can make a couple moves to help. What do you think is a glaring change that needs to happen for the Blackhawks?
Well, I think one is, this is kind of a top-down thing, which sets the tone for everything else, is the identity of the team in terms of the direction. The Blackhawks are just notorious for not choosing a lane and sticking with it. So you build a team for X, and then not even a year later, you're like, no, we're going to do Y instead. It's like, well, this season is a good example where, or at least starting with the preseason, a lot of people, including myself, were primed to think about, we're going to do a rebuild, and then they sign Seth Jones and trade for McCabe, and they get Fleury, Tyler Johnson, Jujhar Khaira, and I was like, no, I don't see that as a rebuild anymore. And then when they are winless in 10 games or whatever to start the season, like, well, that didn't work. And then now, under King, they're pretty much a 500 team under King. So it has its plus and minuses for being that way. But I think, choosing a direction for the team. Are you rebuilding? Are you retooling? And I think that a follow-up question to that is, and I think they may have already asked, is what are you going to do with Kane and Toews? And I think you brought it up, and you do need to ask the question, hey, your contract is going to be expiring within the next year. Do you want to stay with the team, retire as lifelong Blackhawks, or are you open to waiving your no movement clause? And it sounds like, because I think it was last week or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, where an article came out where they pretty much said that the three untouchables for the Blackhawks are Seth Jones, Kane, and Toews. And so you could, at least for Kane and Toews, you can interpret that in a number of ways. One is they asked them, and they both said, no, we're not waiving. Okay, then that forces your hand to be like, well, we can't do anything about it, so we're going to build around you, or you're just part of what we're building, which it is what it is if that's what happened. Or they have never asked them before, and they're like, we don't need to ask them because we do want to rebuild around you, or we not necessarily rebuild, because they may not be wanting to use that term, but we want you as part of the team, however we're going to structure it. And so, I mean, there could be some other decisions or ways you can look at it, but those are two predominant perspectives in terms of dealing with Kane and Toews, in terms of re-upping them or parting ways with them.
It makes you wonder why DeBrincat wouldn't be part of that conversation, considering he's been the most consistent goal scorer we've had for the past 4 years.
Drives me nuts that he was not untouchable.
Yeah. And I think part of that is perception too, is, just because someone's not untouchable, you could basically say, yeah, that's fine, offer us something. We'll probably say no, unless you're going to give us McDavid or something. There's some no-brainers, but chances are you're not going to get that type of deal. So the likelihood of someone like Alex DeBrincat getting traded, it's probably 99.9% sure it's not going to happen. Whereas most of the other players, they're going to listen. Reichel, I would be very hesitant. I would put them in that same category as DeBrincat. Like, it has to be like a no-brainer trade in order to say yes. Doc, I'm all ears.
Same. I agree.
Yeah, you're not trading him for junk, but you're also trading him for, maybe someone else who is a year or two in the NHL who has a lot of potential, but maybe both players just need to change the scenery and they'll thrive under that. But I actually, either way, like, if Doc stays, I think he has potential to be, a contributing player. I think he just has a lot of work on if he stays. But I don't know. I wouldn't be upset either if he was traded for the right package.
Well, Theo, I got 4 names for you. Got Dahan, Strome, Kubalik, and Fleury. Where do you think these guys are going to end up?
DeHaan and Fleury, definitely two contenders. I think a team that's going to need a goalie, like they may have like an okay goalie, but it may not be enough to get them over the hump once they're in the playoffs.
Washington?
You're going to need Washington, but I saw...
That's the rumor, right?
That's the rumor that the Caps are interested in him, but Fleury may not... He may not approve a trade to go to DC, which it's his right, obviously.
Yeah, bad
and
blood.
Then DeHaan, I think the Hawks aren't going to get a whole lot for him, maybe like a fourth rounder or something. But, I think that's fine. Trade him for a fourth rounder, even a fifth rounder to a contender, and then be done with it. Same thing with Gustafsson might be a harder sell, but then again, he was also with the Habs last year and they went to the finals. Not that they saw him as the missing piece to win the championship. But yeah,
what about Kubalik? I've been hearing Rangers and Edmonton.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about Edmonton. I think he could be traded too. I think he's one of those players where he's had a down season, but there's enough intrigue with him as being a second or third line goal scorer where teams need that, especially in the playoffs. And he's no slouch on defense. He's not going to win a Selke or anything like that, but he's not lazy either. And so I think he has a lot of value at the trade deadline. And then Strome, definitely amping up his stock. Even before his hat trick last night, he was playing much better. His face-off percentage is astronomically better. He's competing more consistently with and without the puck. His offense is heating up. So if the Hawks decide to trade him, his stock is getting higher. So now might be the best time because his value might not be any higher. So struck the iron while it's hot. Whereas if the same a couple months ago, I don't think the Hawks had any suitors for him.
I couldn't give him away, man.
Yeah, you couldn't give him away. And there was a rumor that, what about, to Boston? Because they were looking to get rid of, Jake DeBrusk. They were looking to get rid of him. And so why not just do a 1-for-1?
I'd be okay with that.
Swap. Yeah. They're both on expiring deals. I think DeBrusk makes a little bit more. But it's only just for a couple more months. And if, you got rid of Strome, you give DeBrusk a tryout, he doesn't work out, you just don't sign him or you trade him in the offseason, or trade his rights at least because he's a free agent. But but I think now with Strome, I wouldn't be surprised if the Hawks re-upped with him. I wouldn't give, he's not going to get a massive deal like DeBrincat did, but I think maybe a two-year deal, a bump above what he's making today. But yeah, he's not gonna, so to speak, break the bank if the Hawks do decide to re-sign him on a show me deal. That's a little bit longer than what he got this year because it was only 1 year for I think $3 million.
I think he had a 2-year deal at $3.5 million, and I think it's too much for him, to be honest with you.
We were desperate. We had
we were. That's when
Doc.
Taves he was sick, so they signed Dylan Strome to a 2-year deal. This is the second year of that deal, and the idea of paying him more money just doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. If he's getting better, that's one thing. Can he sustain it and be consistent? That's another thing, and I think that's something that he's missed his entire career. Is that consistency. Yeah. And I don't think that he can be. So I think that we should strike while the iron is hot and maybe get 2 bags of pucks for him. One for him and one for his dog. So Theo, man, we really appreciate you coming on, man. It's always a pleasure to talk hockey with you. Thanks a million, dude. Let everybody know what your social media handles are.
Yeah. Social media, mainly just on Twitter. So just search Theo Fox Hockey, and you'll find me there, or go to hockeybuzz.com and click on the Blackhawks articles, and at the end of every article you can find a link to my Twitter handle. And it'd be great if you could follow me, but a lot of great hockey sites out there talking about the Blackhawks. So a lot of good stuff out there. So happy to be part of that.
I'm not going to let you sell yourself short. I read Theo Fox and I think that he's great.
And my favorite.
Give him a follow. It's in order.
It's in order.
Anyways, that's all that we got for you tonight. This is the Tomahawk. We're out of here.